Edgar Allan Poe, found dying in someone else's clothes, and nobody knows why. He was found on a Baltimore street, delirious, wearing clothes that weren't his own, unable to explain how he'd gotten there or where he'd been for the past 5 days. He died 4 days later without ever regaining enough clarity to say what happened. Nearly 200 years later, his cause of death has never been definitively established. By late September of 1849, Edgar Allan Poe, already one of America's most recognized literary figures, had spent the preceding days traveling from Richmond, Virginia, toward Philadelphia, intending to complete an editing project before continuing on to New York, where he planned to finalize arrangements to bring his aunt and future mother-in-law to live with him following his upcoming remarriage. Poe's specific movements and whereabouts during the following days, between his last confirmed sighting in Richmond and his eventual discovery in Baltimore nearly a week later, remain almost entirely undocumented, representing a genuine, significant gap in the historical record that has never been definitively filled. On October 3, 1849, Poe was discovered outside a Baltimore tavern that was, notably, serving as a polling location for a local election taking place that day, found in a state of genuine, severe distress, described by the man who discovered him as delirious, unable to walk unassisted, and dressed in ill-fitting clothing that witnesses and later investigators determined did not belong to him, including a cheap straw hat entirely inconsistent with Poe's typically more formal, well-maintained personal style, a detail that has fueled considerable historical speculation ever since regarding what might have happened to his own clothing, and, more broadly, what he had actually been doing during the preceding days. Poe was taken to Washington College Hospital, where he remained in a state of significant confusion and distress until his death 4 days later, on October 7, 1849. Contemporary accounts from the attending physician describe Poe as experiencing hallucinations and periods of agitation throughout his hospitalization. At one point, reportedly calling out the name Reynolds repeatedly, a name that has never been definitively connected to anyone in Poe's known circle of friends, family, or professional acquaintances, adding yet another genuinely unresolved detail to an already mysterious final chapter. What makes Poe's death genuinely, persistently mysterious isn't simply the absence of witnesses to his final days, but the specific combination of circumstances surrounding his condition and death that has resisted definitive medical explanation for nearly 2 centuries since. The attending physician's own contemporary account, while providing some clinical detail regarding Poe's symptoms, never definitively established an underlying cause of death. And, critically, no autopsy was performed at the time, a decision consistent with common medical practice of the era, but one that has permanently foreclosed any possibility of modern investigators definitively resolving the question through direct physical evidence, since Poe's original death certificate itself has also been lost, meaning even the specific cause of death formally recorded at the time, whatever it may have been, is no longer available for historians to examine directly. Numerous theories regarding Poe's actual cause of death have been proposed by historians, medical researchers, and Poe scholars in the decades since, none achieving full, definitive consensus. One of the most persistently discussed theories centers on a practice known during this specific era as cooping, a form of electoral fraud in which unwilling victims, often intoxicated or drugged, were forced to vote multiple times at different polling locations while wearing different disguises or changes of clothing specifically to avoid detection by election officials, a theory that would directly explain both the specific timing of Poe's discovery outside an active polling location and the unfamiliar clothing he was found wearing. Though this theory, while genuinely plausible given the circumstantial details, has never been definitively proven through any direct historical evidence connecting Poe specifically to a documented cooping scheme. Alternative theories have proposed a range of other possible explanations, including rabies, with one group of modern medical researchers examining Poe's documented symptoms in detail during the 1990s, concluding his specific combination of hallucinations, confusion, and other documented symptoms bore genuine similarity to rabies infection, though this theory similarly lacks any direct confirmable evidence given the absence of an original autopsy or preserved physical remains suitable for modern testing. Other proposed explanations have included complications from alcoholism, given Poe's well-documented lifelong struggles with alcohol, carbon monoxide poisoning, epilepsy, and various other period-appropriate illnesses, none of which has ever achieved definitive confirmation over any of the competing alternatives. Poe's own complicated personal history and reputation, including his documented struggles with alcohol and periodic financial and personal instability throughout his life, has further complicated historical efforts to definitively resolve the mystery, since several of the specific accounts describing his final days and hospitalization were written or embellished considerably after his death by a literary rival, Rufus Griswold, who had a documented personal grudge against Poe and who deliberately, extensively distorted Poe's public reputation and biographical details following his death, specifically to damage his posthumous literary legacy, meaning modern historians studying the case must navigate not only the genuine absence of reliable contemporary documentation, but also the deliberate, documented unreliability of some of the era's most widely circulated accounts of Poe's character and final days. What makes Poe's death endure as one of history's most enduring literary mysteries isn't simply the absence of a definitive medical explanation, though that absence genuinely remains remarkable nearly 2 centuries later, but the specific, almost fittingly ironic circumstance that one of history's most celebrated authors of mystery and macabre fiction, a writer whose own literary legacy was built substantially around unexplained deaths, unreliable narrators, and unresolved psychological horror, would himself die under circumstances that have proven genuinely, permanently resistant to the kind of definitive resolution his own fictional detectives were famous for achieving. If stories like this, where even the master of literary mystery couldn't escape becoming one of history's most enduring unsolved mysteries himself, are exactly what you come here for, subscribe to The Grave Details, because history holds more stories like this than most people will ever know.